Welcome to Soülfööď with Hellen, weekly conversations, a safe space of no judgment where we come together to chill, to relax, and share everything that relates to mindset, inner healing, and spirituality. As you know, that's my favorite topic as it relates to mental health. As we know, each one of us is affected by mental health issues in one way or the other. I'm so excited to bring you another episode with one of my favorite person who talks about relationships, which is actually something that is close to my heart. And today we are going to talk about childhood, how our childhood experiences affect our relationships. Welcome to Soülfööď, Leanne. I'm so honored to have you here. Over to you.
Thank you, Helen. I'm so honored to be here with you. I'm a big fan, as you know. I follow you, and I've watched you with my husband Greg, interviewing him, and I just love your approach. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for saying yes to my invitation to my platform. So to begin with, let me just start with this quote by Steven Seagal. Most of us have unhealthy thoughts and emotions that have either developed as a result of trauma or hardships in their childhood or the way they were raised. That's something that I found to be relevant to our topic that we're talking about, how our childhood experiences, what we go through, affect how we show up as adults in our relationships and our everyday life. So would you help us maybe understand better about how our childhood affects our adult relationships?
Sure. Okay. Well, that's a fantastic quote. I think that we all understand the idea that foundational relationships in our early years are where we first learn how to relate. Our parents, siblings, extended family, if we have them in our lives. And then following that, the influences extend to our peers and our teachers. Oh, there's a bit of a delay that I can hear, Helen.
Oh, sorry, it's the noise from my phone.
Okay.
It's fine, you can go ahead.
So when we're talking about foundational relationships influencing our later relationships, it makes a lot of sense because that's our teaching ground, our learning ground, right? And so as we experience other individuals and their behavior towards us, that forms our beliefs about how relationships should function, what they should look like, and our expectations can also impact our self-worth and our belief system around ourselves and how we relate to the world. Does that clarify that?
Yes, perfectly. Yes, perfectly. Sorry, I'm muting when you are talking so that I avoid the noise from my side to interfere when you are speaking. So when I delay unmuting, just hold on after you have spoken. Yeah, I love that you are getting to the core foundational of how we we get to absorb certain belief systems and develop expectations that we take as the I don't know, core beliefs. Is that what is called core beliefs? That will then shape how we show up or how we interpret situations, how we interpret life. So basically when you talk about foundational relationships, I would love you to explore on who are the foundational relationships that influence how we show up, or that shape us, that shape our belief systems.
So the core beliefs that you just spoke of actually are really imperative to understanding how we continually incorporate those in our relationships moving forward. They can be shifted and changed over time. And in fact, we want that often, because the things that we experience as children, as we know, are not always pleasant. And so taking those negative experiences into our lives as core beliefs about how relationships should look or how we should behave can be quite damaging. So we want to be able to look at, be aware of our core beliefs and which ones of those are helpful, which ones are not helpful. If they're not helpful, they're limiting beliefs. They're limiting us in our ability to show up as our true, authentic, compassionate selves. And those are the ones that we want to address with maybe some professional help, maybe a trusted friend or religious figure that can help us, lead us, guide us through that, becoming more aware of them, and then shifting the thinking around them, shifting the mindset, right? So that we're able to release the limiting beliefs and hold on to the helpful ones. And so, what was the original question, Hellen?
You are getting so deep on this, and I love how you are coming from a space of trying to enlighten us from the foundation of how we take those beliefs, how they become the limiting beliefs that we would need to look at, and how you would need to look at them through therapists or religious figures. It's something that is relatable, I think, to everyone who's listening. Something that is relatable. However, some of us, like for me, it took me so many decades. It's only now that I'm beginning to do the work of looking into my limiting beliefs, because I was used to blaming the ancestors, demons, and what, not taking personal responsibility. And there is this quote that I love that relates to what you just mentioned. Your trauma is not your fault, but your healing is your responsibility. And I think that's where you are saying the limiting beliefs is something that is something that you would need to look at and change. And I feel, Leanne, that's not easy. That's not easy.
No, you're right.
Maybe get deep on that.
Right. So one of the things that I sometimes mention in my work with my coaching clients is talking about the walking wounded. And when I'm talking about the walking wounded, I'm talking about all of us. Nobody has lived a life unscathed, untouched, unharmed. And so we don't want to get into comparisons in terms of my wound is bigger than your wound. It doesn't matter. Pain is pain, right? And so we all experience that. That's part of life. That's part of our existence as human beings. We cannot have the joy without the pain. It's part of the beautiful dichotomy of life. And so in knowing that everyone is walking wounded, we need to recognize the piece about personal responsibility. I love that you brought that up. That was one of the key points that I wanted to talk about today, because personal responsibility for those wounds and how we manage them moving forward is about us. And blaming other people or other things for our wounds doesn't change them. So it's not really helpful. And we have to recognize that those people that inflicted those wounds are also the walking wounded, right? They've brought their own trauma and pain into the relationship that they had with us. And so when we're recognizing that the entire world is full of walking wounded folks, it kind of alleviates some of the feeling of being alone in our pain. And it also, I think, for me anyway, reminds me that because it's a burden we all bear, each one of us must carry our load and must shift it somehow so it's manageable, so that it's not weighing us down, and so that it's not impacting or harming others moving forward. We want to break the cycle, right? We don't want to carry on behaviors that we have learned that have been harmful, that have been inflicted upon us through whatever relationships we've experienced thus far, right? And we want to be the best version of ourselves. We've heard that phrase a bazillion times, but it's really quite a lovely catchphrase to remind us that we can change, we can grow, and we can learn from our pain, from our wounds, about how we want to be and how we want to show up for others, right?
Yes, so powerful. I love how you are laying out the wisdom nuggets, and especially when you talk about the walking wounded, Leanne, that's something that hits close home. Like literally, how did we even come to a space where we get to live out somebody's pain? We get to absorb somebody's pain. We are being punished. It's like literally I am being born in a family of walking wounded people who are not even consciously aware, not their fault, can't blame, but I'm absorbing all the negative stuff, all the things that I would need to figure out on my own, that I would need to look at, that I would need to look into how I can dismantle these thinking patterns and negative traits that are already crystallized in my being, in my soul, in my mindset, and it's something that is painful. And I don't know how do we cannot stop this negative pattern maybe from happening. We can only deal from where we are. We are already damaged people. We are already walking wounded. And like what you just mentioned, that you can heal from your pain. You can learn. And that's the idea. You learn, you grow, you expand, you evolve, you become your best self, like what you just mentioned. You mentioned it so beautifully. So when we absorb these negative things, Leanne, I absorb the negative belief about money, how it's difficult for me to make money or to keep money, and I'm not even aware, but I'm observing this pattern of how I cannot handle money, I cannot handle wealth or relationships. In terms of my relationship with other people, I get so attached, and everything about me, I'm just carrying that energy. How do I begin to dismantle so that I become my highest self? How do I begin to pay attention to myself and look deeper beyond everything that is happening, but to look deep inside me?
Well, I think you've already touched on it, which is the awareness piece. But how do we get the awareness? So people get to that place through various methods. It might be through prayer, it might be through meditation, it might be through spending time in nature or with animals. Sometimes solitary work works best for someone, by journaling, writing. Some people, that doesn't appeal to them. They're more verbal. They need contact, so they want to share more, discuss more. Conversations like this with someone that you feel has grown, is a mentor to you, that you respect, and that you look at their behavior and say, I want to be like that, right? Have those conversations. Open up and discuss your pain. Let it out. I think one of the issues with being the walking wounded is that we're very protective, right? We're protective of our pain. We don't want people to know that we have it. And so we wear a lot of different masks, and those masks maybe help us function. They serve a purpose. I put on a work mask if I'm having a bad day. Everybody does, right? Or a parent mask if we're having a rough time, we're sleep deprived, or we're ill, or we're grumpy. But we try our best to show up in a healthy way. These masks are coping mechanisms, and there's lots of coping mechanisms. This is an acceptable one, but it's also important to recognize when we're doing it, why we're doing it, and when we need to let the mask fall. When we're in a safe space, we can let that mask come off, and we can relax into that awareness of our pain. Because without even looking at our pain, there's no healing it, right? It's like we can't find the wound, so we can't tend to it. Yeah?
Yes, very true. I'm seeing Greg is listening, and he just commented, Walking Wounded, love that. Yes, personal responsibility, like what we were talking about. Then Angela, core wounds are part of us, but not a crush or an excuse. Yes, that's wonderful. I just want to acknowledge to our audience, thank you so much for tuning in and for being with us in our conversation. We are talking about the impact of childhood experiences on adult relationships with my guest, Leanne Million. She is a relationship and sexuality coach. I'm so humbled to have her here. One thing that you just mentioned about masks, it really hits me hard, because I'm also accused of that. Like I lived my life like putting on a mask, wanting to appear like I'm a humble girl, I'm a good person, I'm what, but inside I was imploding, and I struggled for a long time with anxiety, and I wasn't aware, because I didn't know it's something that would need medical help, or that what you mentioned earlier, you can go to therapists or religious people who can assist you. I wasn't aware, because I wasn't allowing myself to be in touch with the fact that, I have mental illness, I have issues that we are talking about today that goes deeper to childhood experiences that may really affect how I was now showing up in my 20s as a wounded girl who turned out to be a wounded woman who's raising a son. It's something that we basically witness and see around. So one thing that I have also close to my heart, when I listened to Lisa Nichols, and I loved her quote, which said, I got to a point where I asked myself, what am I trying to prove? What am I trying to protect? What am I trying to hide? What am I trying to defend? Because we are trying to put on an image of being something that we are not even aware of. And that's what Greg was speaking about on Thursday when he was speaking about vulnerability. And I resonate with that, because it's a place that I want to reach, of allowing myself to be vulnerable and get in touch with myself, because this childhood stuff and baggage, it's not worth trying to protect and continue putting on a mask. It's really not worth it. So talking about how these experiences affect our adult relationships, what are attachment styles that we tend to take on with us in our relationships?
Okay, so attachment styles, we all have them. It means how do we attach? How do we relate to others? So there's 4 basic ones. Secure attachment, which means that we feel comfortable relating, we feel comfortable with intimacy, we feel comfortable being vulnerable, and we recognize that when a relationship shifts or is redefined or ends, that we're okay, that we're not going to, be devastated, right? So our reactions are very level, and we understand the ebb and flow of relationships in a secure attachment. When we have anxious attachment or anxious preoccupied, so in adult versions of this, we call it preoccupied. In that form, we are needy, we crave attention. Without constant contact from someone, we fear that they are not interested in a relationship with us, that they are maybe upset with us. So an example of that might be, I have a friend that I text regularly, and they're usually very good at getting back to me quickly. But then one day they don't. And in my head, I start creating all kinds of stories around what's going on. Why are they mad at me? I look back at my texts. I must have offended them in some way. I've done something to cause this. A lot of the anxious attachment is about fault, taking on the blame for some kind of disconnect in the relationship, even if it's temporary. And so you can imagine in that kind of an attachment style, there's a lot of stress, a lot of worry, a lot of preoccupied thoughts, and story creation, right? Creating those stories about what's happening with them. What are they thinking? What do they want from me that I'm not giving them? So the next is fearful avoidant. And so in a fearful avoidant style, those people tend to crave attention, but fear intimacy. So it can be kind of an interesting experience in that they move very quickly into a relationship, a friendship, a romantic relationship, and then they pull back. They pull back because they're afraid of the next steps, right? Moving on to, becoming closer, being more vulnerable, being more intimate with that person. They're not willing to go there. And that fear comes up. And so they step back. So in that kind of a dynamic, an example might be, you go on a date with somebody. It's a great first date. You have so much fun. You are laughing. You're really compatible. It feels good. Instinctively, you're going to have a second date, right? And throughout the week before the second date, they are texting you and contacting you. They want to talk to you on the phone. And then the second date happens, and suddenly they're a different person. They're a little colder, a little more reserved, a little more distant, right? And then the second date, they don't contact you. In this case, it's not because they don't like you, it's because they like you, right? It's because they like you and they can see that this is going to lead to an intimate friendship or an intimate romantic connection that they are afraid of, right? And then the last one is dismissive avoidant. in which this can manifest really as sort of really hard-headed independence. I'll do it myself. I don't need anybody. I'm okay on my own, right? And the dismissive avoidant person actually doesn't see value in intimate relationships. They don't actually want to go there at all, right? And so these develop for various reasons, but primarily the secure attached person will have parents, siblings, family, peers, and teachers that are supportive, that allow them to explore and come back to a safe space. They understand that no matter what happens, even if there's an argument, that things will be okay, right? With the anxious, preoccupied person, they have been taught that the people around them are not to be depended on. They are unpredictable. And sometimes they withdraw, right? Sometimes they're very close and we feel secure with them, but then sometimes they withdraw. And that can be for a lot of reasons. And then with the fearful avoidant, that can be about abuse, right? So we're in a situation where our caregiver, the ones that we rely on for love, attention, affection, actually hurt us. And so we get close to them and we are hurt. And that teaches us to be afraid of that intimacy. And then the dismissive avoidant are often neglected or feel abandoned. So it's kind of a resiliency coping mechanism, right? It's like, I don't need anybody then. I'm good. I'm fine. You can see this in very young children as well who have been neglected, right? They will get their own meals. They will, at 3 and 4 years old, they're doing things that are for themselves that from the outside might look like incredibly adult activities and responsibilities. And wow, this child is really quite amazing. You might even admire that in them. But sometimes the root of that, the cause of that, is that they have been having to take on those roles, right? Having to be more adult than they are even ready for. So those are the 4 basic attachment styles and some examples of how they might show up and what the root causes are.
Yeah, this is deep, and I can see Jason is commenting. I've experienced all these attachment styles. Angela, disorganized and frustrated. Yeah. Nomsa is saying, so true. I agree with you. Leanne, Shapisai, love this. Portia, hello guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we hope you are learning as our expert is sharing the wisdom nuggets to help us understand relationships on a deeper level.
Helen, can I just interject here?
Yes, it's fine.
Angela mentions disorganized, and that's another attachment style that was actually discovered a little bit later. And the disorganized attachment style comes from a situation where there's extreme unpredictability, and the child doesn't know how to respond. So they can respond with an anxious attachment initially, want to be clingy, want to be close, want to be very tightly enmeshed in a relationship with someone, and then push them away, and then be afraid, right? And so it's kind of all over the map in terms of how do I relate to others? I'm not really sure, because the extreme unpredictability of my learning about relating has caused me to not really understand what approach works best. And so I'll try them all, right?
Yes, powerful. Okay. maybe what I would want to understand and relate with is I want you to help me understand which category does what I'm about to say fit into, which style, which attachment style. Say someone is in a relationship with their spouse, with their boyfriend, with their girlfriend, and you don't seem to be getting enough. You seem like you want more, and you don't get to receive. And you try to give that, maybe the kind of attention that you want. Maybe your love language is gifts and you try to give them, or maybe your love language is touch. Maybe you try to express that love language and you don't get to seem to receive that. And you understand that it's a principle in our religious structures where you say if you are married to one person, that person is forever. And whatever you desire in a man or in a woman, you need to get it in marriage. So you struggle to make things go your way. Try to help him understand your needs, your desires, and your stuff. Will it be called sort of an attachment? Failing to let go and accept? Which category does it fall into? And is it some kind of attachment that we picked from childhood that we may need to look at?
So before I get into that, I just want to touch on the fact that attachment styles can vary. So people love labels. We love categorizing ourselves and other people and saying, oh, that person is this, and I am this. And that doesn't apply here. These shifts, they vary. They can change from relationship to relationship. They can change from day to day. So on a day when you're feeling particularly overwhelmed by your world, whatever's going on in it, you can feel quite anxious about your connection with someone, right? On a day that you're not feeling overwhelmed, you might feel quite secure. So I just want to point out that it is flexible and it does fluctuate. Okay. All right. So back to the example. When we're not getting enough in a relationship, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's any of these attachment styles in particular, but let's assume that it could be an anxious attachment, in which case, fundamentally, with anxious attached people or preoccupied people, very rarely is the partner ever going to really give you enough, right? Because what you actually want is impossible to provide. What you actually think you want is constant contact, constant reassurance. And that's not appropriate in any relationship to ask of anyone. So it could be that if you're feeling like, I know my partner is showing up in every way that they can, and it's still not enough for me, that I think warrants looking at. That could be anxious attachment. And you could be looking at some very foundational beliefs about relationships and about your worth. And that is where you would start the exploration. Am I learning this behavior from this relationship, or am I actually bringing it into this relationship from the past, right? So when we're talking about these styles, remember that it's not always about the trauma or about the issues we've had in childhood. It could also be your partner's just not able to provide the things that you're looking for, right? And so one of the things I think that has happened in modern years is kind of a cloistering of couples, right? We see a lot of enmeshed couples. So they're codependent. They become everything to each other. You know, friend, confidant, parenting partner, financial partner, sometimes business partner, romantic partner. And that's a lot of roles. And if we think about how life used to be, we were much more community oriented. And so our confidant didn't have to be our partner, right? We had many of those outside of the relationship. And our parenting partner didn't have to be our partner. We had extended family in the house, or we had, you know, community with our church or with our neighbors, right? And so they didn't have to show up in those roles for us all the time. And so now sometimes that feeling of I need to get everything from my partner is a little bit too much of an ask. And we can have friends in our lives and family in our lives that we rely on for some of that as well, right? Take some of the pressure off our what I call nesting partner or our spouse. And so I think that's a really key point, is that there could also be a very foundational, you know, restriction on time, energy, and resources that your partner has to bring to the relationship. If they're working 16-hour days and you want them to come home and be your confidant, parenting partner, you know, and intimacy partner, good luck. Right? We need to also be real about what other demands are happening in their world. What are we asking of them, and is it realistic? So bringing compassion to that conversation and those needs. And the other piece that I want to talk to you about is the love language that you brought up. So if your love language is gifts, don't necessarily assume that that's theirs, right? If you love to receive gifts, you can try it and see if it works and say, here, honey, I love you. If they respond well to that, that might be a love language of theirs. But if they don't, it might be the lowest love language on the map, right? And so you really need to get to know them and what they need, and not assume that their needs are yours, right? Sometimes we do that. I know I'm a terrible gift giver because I always look at something and I'm buying what I want, right? Oh, that's pretty. I love that. I want that. I'll get that for my friend, but my friend doesn't like the color or the style, would never wear it. What am I doing, right? I'm not thinking from their perspective. And so I think it's really important to put yourself in the other person's shoes, understand what resources they have available to them, and if you're asking too much. And then also look at, beyond that, is there an attachment style here in play that comes from my past that has really nothing to do with this relationship?
Beautiful. I love the fact that you are guiding us back to ourselves, looking back to try to analyze our attachment styles if we are not projecting something that we picked up from somebody, or a wound that was, put on us by somebody. Because I actually feel like there's a lot of projection in relationships. We project a lot of our issues, a lot of our baggage onto our partners, and it becomes messy. And even the issue of that attachment style that you are talking about, the anxious attachment, preoccupied, which relates to what I just asked you. It's something that most people we struggle with, because we want people to be who we want them to be, or to meet our own expectations. So it's like I'm now projecting in trying to put my partner in a box, but it's very important to learn our partners, to learn about myself, to learn about who they are and how they show up in the relationships. Portia is saying that one of a friend who does not respond as usual. I'm one of those. I start to ask, what have I done wrong? We are all like that, Portia. Nomsa, 10 years ago, before I got into relationship coaching, I was the pusher, Leanne. When I start having problems, my solving situation was to get out of it, literally everybody. Shapisa is saying you have to know your partner. Very, very true. Because you can't keep on reacting, or you can't keep on suffering because your partner is not giving you what you want. At the end of the day, it's you who has to suffer. How maybe your partner is living his full life and is giving you the best that he has, but our expectations will never, the tests, nothing will ever quench the tests. Angela is saying discovering love languages is a fun couples activity. Also applies to any relationship. Learning each other's love language is a very loving way to show up. That's perfect. That's perfectly said. So while we are still on attachment styles, I think you have spoken about how we develop attachment styles. Leanne, you touched on that and how they impact our relationships. I think you have touched on that as well. Then what can we do to help ourselves and others navigate in relationships once we know our attachment style? If you can talk about that, you can even add anything that we might have omitted during our conversation. Oh, comments are coming.
Oh, look at that. So what can we do? So if we know that there is an attachment style showing up in our relationship, right? That's the first step. We can kind of go, okay, I see that the pattern of my life has been this. This is how people have been treating me, and therefore I'm anxious, or therefore I'm afraid, or therefore I'm being dismissive, right? So we can say, okay, I relate to one of those in this relationship, in this situation. Knowing that, you can step into, kind of lean into the uncomfortableness of looking at and really trying to unpack what occurred in the past. Because I think when we can attach or can recognize, I'm trying not to use the word attachment, when we can recognize that situation is occurring, first of all, we can step away from assuming it's about our partner, right? Let's not do that anymore. Let's assume that it is ours, that it is our baggage, like you were saying, that we're bringing to the table here. We can also acknowledge that, first of all, with our partner, which takes a lot of the stress out of the dialogue that you might be having, right? So I know in my past, some of the conversations get pretty heated in a relationship, right? And so saying to your partner, you know what? I think this has to do with my past. And I'm going to go away from this conversation for a while and really look at that and try to delve into why that's happening here and what it is that's happening here that's maybe bringing that to the surface. And then I can come back to you and we can actually talk about this relationship, because I don't want to talk about it from the lens of I'm living in the past, right? So there's a few ways to go about that, but I've mentioned a couple already. stepping into nature, journaling, meditation, prayer. These are all sort of self-connecting activities that allow us to think and process. But there's also some other pieces that might be helpful too, which is embodiment practice. So this is something that's relatively new in my world. And I'm, 53, so I could have used this a lot sooner, but knowing that body, mind, and soul are all connected. We cannot take them apart and deal with them separately. So when we're having these recurring thoughts of, there's something wrong in my relationship, or there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong with my partner, and we identify, okay, there might be some patterns from my past here that are informing these thoughts. When we're there, we can then take that and put it into our bodies, because our bodies are like wonderful giant processing machines, right? They have the systems in place to help us. We just often ignore them. So there's a few other ways that people attend to that. One could be working out, going for a run, playing a sport, engaging the body. That's a very foundational kind of, okay, I'm going to go release some of this extra energy that I have that I'm pouring into these thoughts. And that will help. But beyond that, we can actually bring the thoughts into our bodies and say, okay, I'm going to think about this while I make noise, jump around, release by crying out, sighing. These are all things that we don't do in a modern society, but we used to do a lot of, right? Someone was frustrated. They might have, like a temper tantrum, right? Children are really excellent processors most of the time. And so we can look at them and say, what do they do when they're frustrated? They throw things. Go throw some rocks, right? Like these are the things that we can embody, and we can name the rocks. We can put a name to the rock and say, this is my, fear, and I'm going to throw it into the river. And engaging physically will really help move and process those feelings quicker. It's not that you can't do it intellectually, you can, but it's another way in. And for people who are really physical people, that can be quite helpful. So that's something that you can do. Some things to avoid are self-medicating kinds of behaviors: food, sex, alcohol, drugs. Other kinds of self-medicating behaviors that show up that look positive are things like martyrdom. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. And I'll do everything for you. Caretaking. Being very concerned about what other people are doing with their lives. Very concerned about how they're managing their thoughts, their behaviors. And zero attention to what our own behaviors and thoughts are. People pleasing, right? Can be also a trauma response. I will become whatever you want me to be. What do you want? Right? If that's a one-sided kind of dialogue that you're having with a partner, that's a problem. And I'm a people pleaser in recovery, so I know all about that. Years and years and years of, I will be whatever you want me to be. And not asking myself, who am I? Right? Not ever really knowing, because I was always so busy figuring out what other people needed, what other people wanted, and becoming that. Right? You're laughing because you know? Okay, Helen, I got you. I got your number. You're muted right now.
Yeah, I think we are both people pleasers in recovery, and I can relate. I think I once mentioned it in one of your group, in one of your posts
Yeah.
about me struggling with that, because that's how we were conditioned. It's one of the things that we also picked up on, like we absorbed like from our childhood, and I love how you're putting everything together. The importance of unpacking the past, and because what happened in the past may not be our fault, but beginning to notice and unpack is I believe it's our responsibility. And I love that you are talking about the empowering ways to navigate through this. You are actually emphasizing on self-connecting activities. And when we begin to talk about self, then we are done, because that's all we need. Everything, relates to us. So in other ways, you are trying to encourage the audience. Don't point fingers. It's done. It's okay. The damage is done. The walking wounded, they've done the damage to us. And in order for us to stop the pattern, let's look within. Let's connect to ourselves, because the truth is always inside us. But to be honest, Leanne, if I would like speak in literal terms, I have always been running away from myself all my life. Maybe because I didn't know how to connect. And I love that you are emphasizing on these self-connecting activities. And I believe I'm not the only one who's always running and trying to avoid. And you have also gave us these wisdom nuggets of things to avoid. Do not numb, do not avoid, don't do drugs, sex, those are the things that we run to. Maybe we overwork, we do drugs, we are always focused outside, but you are taking us back to to connecting to ourselves. I want to read these comments before we go to the next step. Shapisa is saying our partners should know us as well, so that we don't suffer. I would love you to speak about that, Leanne. I have been, Jason is saying, I've been in a relationship with someone who never shared their love languages. I was always missing the mark when attempting to show my love towards them. We can as well get into this. Kyle is saying, I'm Leanne's brother, and she will recall the difficulties I had with my first wife over 30 years ago. My wife's attachment style was an insecure one, in which she couldn't tolerate me having good relationship to others besides her. I think this is very powerful. It relates to most of us. My first wife spoke poorly to me constantly about Leanne and my parents in very insulting ways, and she tried to prevent me from seeing my family. Oh my God, this is very, very powerful and relatable, because especially with women, that is how we could. I think it comes from a space of sense of insecurity, right, Leanne? Like from the wife's part, she also stood in the way of things like my hobbies outside home, the desire to monopolize and control. And I think this, I would love you, Leanne, to dig deep on educating women on how to navigate through this. Nomsa is saying, me too as a people pleaser. Oh my God. Oh, fast, my sister. Greg, I love this conversation. So much vulnerability and honest wisdom. Thank you, Craig. Craig is Leanne's husband. Thank you so much for watching. Over to you, Leanne. I don't know if you can speak about anything in terms of the comments.
Absolutely. So the first one was about our partners should know us as well, so that we don't suffer.
Yes.
So, and that leads right into Jason's comment about my partner refused to share their love language, so I was always missing the mark. So one of the things that we may have heard before is, I'm not a mind reader, right? Have we heard that phrase before? I'm not a mind reader. How do I know what you're thinking or wanting or needing or desiring? I don't. You can never know until someone tells you or shows you, right? And so without demonstrative or clear dialogue, demonstrative behavior or clear dialogue about what your needs are, they won't be met. They won't be met. And that's the personal responsibility piece. We need to advocate for what we want, desire, and need in a relationship. There's no shortcut around that. We might get lucky. We might get lucky in terms of having a partner that anticipates some of our needs or knows us well enough to kind of infer or interpret what we need. But we can't rely on that. And our needs shift. They change over time. We grow as people. And every day is different, right? One day as a parent, I might want to really spend all of my time with my child. And the next day I might be overwhelmed and exhausted and need help, right? But if I just look over at my partner and grumpily assume that they should know that I need help, I'm not doing myself, them, or the relationship justice. I need to speak up and say, honey, I need help, right? What can you offer me today? What do you have available in terms of time and energy? Because I'm done. And a lot of the times that feels really scary, or it feels like I shouldn't have to. I shouldn't have to ask. I've heard that 1,000 times. Why should I have to ask my partner for what I want? Well, in order to have what you want, you need to speak it. You need to define it. You need to know, first of all, you need to know what you actually want, because sometimes we miss the mark, right? We think we want something and we kind of lean into that, and then we go, oh no, actually I don't want that. We have to be brave and step into the space of, I made a mistake. That's not actually what I want. I want something that looks more like this. If we're not willing to have those conversations, I don't think we're ready to be in a relationship, right? And unfortunately, every relationship needs that. Every relationship needs that nurturing and that tending. We cannot just assume that our garden will grow without us watering it, right? And water looks like showing up, which means connection, dialogue, and vulnerability. And if we're not willing to do those things, the relationship will suffer. Now, if we're in a marriage where that's happening, that doesn't mean it's over. It doesn't mean, it doesn't mean that the garden can't grow. It just means that, maybe our partner doesn't know what to put into our watering can, right? And that's where Jason's question comes up, or statement comes up about his partner not sharing their love language. Without that information, without really understanding your partner, if they're not able to articulate their wants and needs, you will miss the mark sometimes. It's unavoidable, right? And so sometimes it's really important to sit down and say, I tried this with you and it didn't work, right? And I'm not really sure what I could have done differently. Let's come up with some ideas, right? Let's play. And I think experimenting with a relationship is really important too, as it grows. Because as you grow as people and your needs change, you might, in the initial stages of the honeymoon phase, you might have really wanted to be connected physically and cuddle a lot. But as your, responsibilities grew in business or in parenting, that doesn't seem practical anymore, and it seems like an infringement on the very precious time that you have. So continually dialoguing, continually checking in and saying, you know what? I love cuddling with you, but if you want to cuddle right at mealtime when I'm trying to get everything ready, that's not a good time for me. Can we schedule some cuddle time maybe? Let's look at a day that's good for both of us, or a time that's good for both of us. Or maybe you could help with dinner, And then when dinner's done, we could cuddle, right? That kind of negotiation. Relationships are negotiation. That's what they are when we're in a relationship. And whatever people bring to the table is what they can offer, right? But sometimes they don't know what you're interested in, so they don't put it on the table. Sometimes gender roles get in the way, right? Like, I'm the woman, so I'm going to make all the meals. You're the man, so you don't have to touch anything in the kitchen. That's not always true. I know wonderful men who are very active in the kitchen, who are awesome cooks, who, you know, in my second marriage, I rarely had to make a meal because he actually liked to cook. And in his previous relationship, he was kept out of the kitchen. And so it was frustrating for him. And so when I came along and I said, sure, make a meal, he was excited, right? That was an awesome opportunity for him. And so we need to kind of throw out the gender roles sometimes and say, you know, the mother is not necessarily the only nurturer in the household for the children. The man is not necessarily the only one who can do the yard work, right? Not only that, you can learn things and teach each other. If I don't know much about cars, but my spouse does, I would love to know about how to change a tire. I would love to know about how the engine works, you know, or what my upkeep really should look like, or what to look for in a mechanic's shop. And if they can show that to me, fantastic. That helps me grow and know how to navigate those things that might come up, right? So experimentation in a relationship and play and dialogue should all be part of it. And when we get stuck, it's usually because we're not doing those things. It's usually because we're afraid to dialogue, or we're afraid to ask, or we're afraid to advocate for ourselves and what we're interested in doing, trying, learning, and knowing. And then the other part was, I wanted to mention, just going back to the self connecting activities. One of the ones that I forgot to mention was creativity. Humans are creative beings. And one of the most beautiful gifts that you can give yourself is a hobby or an interest where you're creative. It might be writing, it might be painting, it might be sculpting or building, whatever it is, right? But that idea of putting something out into the world that came from your brain, came from your creative soul, is a beautiful gift. And it's a gift to yourself too. And it's soothing. So, you know, again, take an attitude of experimentation and play if that's not part of your world yet. If you don't have something that you do well, maybe you've always wanted to sing, but you're not a great singer, or maybe play an instrument, but you're not a musician. That's okay. You can start at the beginning, just like everybody else when we're learning a skill. Play and experiment and see where it takes you. And it's very self-connecting. So that was the piece that I wanted to put out there too.
I love that you're talking about creativity on self-connecting issues, because for me personally, if you give me a mic to sing, I cannot even do one chorus. I am so bad at singing. If you give me a mic to speak, I'm not yet a good speaker, but it's something that I love. And what I'm doing here with you is like I'm living that creativity part, connecting to myself and learning from experts like you. And it's a great privilege for me to be sitting here with you, sharing this wisdom, and I'm so grateful. I don't take this for granted at all, because I am learning a lot from everything that you were speaking. I was writing down some of the things that you were just mentioning, and it's very true what you were emphasizing on in terms of communication. Communication is key. whether in a relationship with your spouse, with your colleagues, siblings, family, whatever, where it should be part of our nature to be able to speak about your needs, to speak about the things that you want, because people are not going to give you what you do not ask for. And I tell you, Leanne, it's something that I struggle with so much, to be able to to speak out, even if I'm in a restaurant and I want something. I just feel like I'm bothering them, yet I'm paying for a service. But, I'm now learning to come out of that shell. And sometimes I even speak out, like, literally, and I get a response that is so welcoming, and I'll be like, wow, so is it that easy? So it's something that I'm still learning, and it really touched me, because in everything, it really affects you in every area of our lives, not just in our relationships with our spouses. It's something that translates to every area of our lives, and I love that you're emphasizing about it, and I hope to continue to learn about communication, because I really struggle in that department, but it's something that is very powerful. And I love when you were talking about experiments, doing experiments and allowing yourself to get in tune and in touch with the flow of the relationship by bringing everything that you literally love together and enjoy the flow of the relationship. Nomsa is saying so truly, and we need to communicate our needs. Craig is saying experiment. I think he's emphasizing on that. Jason is saying just try to keep me out of the kitchen. Nomsa, wrong words, Hellen. You are good. I am a great speaker. I take back my words. Thank you, Nomsa. I am a great speaker from Africa, and I will speak in Canada, and Leanne will be there, and Greg.
I will welcome you, absolutely.
Linda is saying, during 57 years of marriage, I learned that a relationship is a growing and learning time throughout its existence. Interest, affection, and humor are very good openers to honest. These are words of wisdom, Linda. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone who's tuning in. My guest is Leanne Million from Canada, who's sharing wisdom nuggets. Any question, feel free to put on our comment section or inbox, or follow Leanne for more coaching services. She's a life coach in relationships, and she will help you. She will put her link on the comment section afterwards. So I don't know if you have any words that you want to mention to our audience, and also tell them where they can find you after our talk today.
Well, I just wanted to touch on what Linda, who is my mom, hi mom, shared. Humor, interest, and affection are good openers to honest exchange. I think that's really important when we're advocating for our needs, to remember compassion, humor, I statements. These are the sort of things that will help the dialogue happen more freely, instead of coming at your partner with accusatory language or blaming language or shaming language. Step back and say, I have something that I'm interested in sharing with you. Are you interested? Is this a good time? Or go for a walk together. I know that my mom and dad used to do that. That was their best talking time, was walking and talking, right? And it's just engaging the body again, right? So that there's a little bit more free flow, relaxation. So it's not sitting across the table from each other in kind of a, confrontation, right? So we want to reduce the sort of inflammatory language in the dialogue, and have that gentle free flow and loving, compassionate discussion, right? So that's sort of the final piece. And then where you can reach me is at leannemillion.com. And you can follow me at Leanne Million on Instagram or on Facebook as well. We have Empowered Now, Relationship Support and Advice for All, which is our Facebook group. So please join us there. Thank you so much, Hellen. This was awesome. I love talking with you.
Thank you, Leanne. I enjoyed our talk and the wisdom that you have been sharing with us from the beginning of our conversation. I have one last question. What is it?
Here it comes. Okay, I'm ready.
I guess you have to go with this one last question because I love learning. What is our purpose here on earth?
What is our purpose here on earth?
Yes.
What is our purpose here on earth? Well, I think a lot of us feel this way, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. How do we do that? Through relationships. I think how we relate is how we grow spiritually. I really do. And so that's our purpose, is to relate with that idea in mind, that we are here to learn from one another, and that even the wounds that have been inflicted upon us are part of that. And those lessons are how we evolve as spiritual beings. That's my core belief.
Well articulated, short and precise wisdom. Thank you, Leanne. There's so much wisdom that springs from your heart, and I would love to have you back on our show, both with Craig. We learn a lot from you, and relationships play an integral part of our lives. And I am so grateful for the wisdom that you have shared and all the insights and the knowledge that you have imparted on us. I'm so grateful, and I'm seeing from the interactions from our audience that it was a flowing conversations, and I'm so grateful for having you here. It's an honor. Thank you so much, our lovely audience, for having you here as you watch our episode. Hope to see you next time. As we continue with our episodes on Soülfööď with Hellen, where we talk about spirituality, mindset, and inner healing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leanne.